Thank you for joining us this evening for this event. This is our first gallery-sponsored webinar. I'm really excited by how it should work out. I know this soft start this semester has been a little irksome, but luckily the wonders of digital technology hopefully will make possible events like this help with that irksomeness. Before I get ahead of myself, I need to thank many people at the university who made this exhibition possible. University President Ronald LaShawn, Provost Mohammed Qayyum, President of the USI Foundation, David Bauer, Dean of the College of Liberal Arts, James Beebe, and the Assistant Deans, Melinda Roberts and Sakina Hughes, Chair of the Art Design Department, Sarah Christensen Blair, all of the art design faculty. A special thanks to Christina Arwood, the Marketing Director for the College of Liberal Arts, and our webinar host, and Rob Dickus, Assistant Professor of Photography, for the technical logistics for our event this evening. I also want to thank the student attendants who will be greeting you when you visit the galleries next week, Em, Allie, Emerald, and Justine. I also want to express my profuse thanks to the Efroymson Family Fund for their continued support for the Efroymson Bridge Year Fellowship. Without the Family Fund support, this opportunity, which is now going on for more than 9 years, would not be possible. This exhibition is probably the most visible part of the Efroymson Fellowship, but the fellowship includes many things. Megan and every one of our fellows has had a 1-year access to the art design department's studio facilities, monetary support to help them make work and purchase supplies during that year, and also mentorship from a faculty member in their preparation and applications for graduate school. The fellowship asked the rewardee to assist a mentor in teaching a class related to their media, to apply to graduate schools, hopefully with the goal of entering an MFA program, and to exhibit the works they created during the fellowship. Megan Thorne's Efroymson experience is strangely unique for the fellowship. Like all of our students this last year and a half, well, feels like a year and a half, the COVID-19 has impacted their access to the university studios and equipment. Despite the complications, Megan has orchestrated a wonderful and cohesive show. Without further ado, I'm going to send your attention over to her.
I'm Rob Dickus, and this year I've had the pleasure of being Megan's mentor. There has definitely been some ups and downs. If you think about it, a little over a year ago, we started working together. We right away sat down and decided that we wanted to meet at least once a week, if not more. And that was outside of when she was helping with the classes and teaching her class. Then she came to a convention with me in Houston, Texas in early March. And by the time we were leaving our convention, the world was starting to go into a full lockdown. And we had to reimagine how this fellowship was going to work. And in Megan's case, she had to really reconsider how she was going to make work, because as somebody that was working a lot in a lighting studio and needing the kind of equipment that we were able to supply her, she was locked out of that situation and had to reimagine what this would mean. During this time, we spent a lot of time communicating either by phone or online and discussing different conceptual ideas and how to grow her ideas, artists to look at, and how to continually grow herself. As we came through the summer, we finally were able to start coming back to campus, and immediately Megan started wanting to get access into lighting and into the studio, into the print lab. And so, unlike most people in this situation where they would have a year to work, in essence, Megan ended up having 1 semester to really put the show together. I want to say that what she did is really a phenomenal thing. It's not what we would consider a normal photography show with a bunch of images and frames on walls. She has installation work. She has work that really makes you reconsider what it means to be a woman. It's been interesting being a male mentor, helping a female student think about feminism and what this means. In turn, what she's done is help open my eyes and educate me. And it's been just a great pleasure to work together this year. So without any further ado, I want to introduce you to this past year's Efroymson Award winner, Megan Thorne.
Hello. I am Megan Thorne, as you guys have heard from multiple different people at this time. This is going to be a different kind of artist talk than I think you might be expecting, mainly because we are in a different kind of world right now. Usually when I had this in my head of how an artist talk would go, I didn't exactly think I'd be talking to a camera with 4 other people equally spaced out by 6 feet in a room with masks on and no one else, not even my family. So to say this is a little different is an understatement. But without further ado, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about my experience. And unfortunately, I know we all have lived through COVID, and I know we don't want to kind of relive those painful months, if you want to call it that. But I'm going to make us take a trip down memory road anyway. So sorry in advance. First of all, I would like to kind of start off with the timeline. So if you think about where we were in December 2019, things were great. We could go into public spaces. I was in in-person class. I had just graduated, and I found out that I was the Efroymson Fellow, and it was probably one of the best days of my life. To say the least, I actually went into Rob's office, and I was like, I can't look, like I can't find out, and he was like, well, I have an answer for you. And I was like, oh God, like you can't tell me, like I'm gonna freak out. And he was like, you got it. And then I kind of blacked out and cried a whole lot like you do. And I was super excited, super pumped to have this opportunity. Went, you know, full head first into what I thought was gonna be the best year creating art ever. And unfortunately, that is when COVID hit in, I guess you could say, early March. So I had 2 months of, you know, being a part of his classes and taking advice from him and learning from other students. And like Rob just previously mentioned, we went to a conference, and when we came back, time stopped. I had created very, very little amount of work in that 2 months time span. And to be quite honest with you, when I found out after spring break that we were not returning to classes, I kind of didn't know what to do. I had nothing really prepared. I didn't really fully know what I wanted to do yet. And it was really absolutely terrifying. I remember we kind of just had, you know, our Zoom class, which I was being a part of, to try and stay inspired, because how do you stay inspired when everything around you is crumbling? You really can't. And so I had a meeting coming up with Rob to talk about like what I've been creating and what I've been doing over the past month of pretty much March, which was absolutely nothing. And I was like, man, how am I going to sit here in a Zoom call and be like, I'm sorry, Rob, I haven't done anything for my fellowship. It's really great. And so, I don't know, it was kind of hard. And so I told him, and I was like, we got on the call, and I was like, hey, I've created literally nothing, and what I've created very little of is straight crap. So like, I don't know what to do. And I kind of told him some other ideas, and I was like, I really want to do something about being quarantined, because when I got back from the conference, I actually was really sick. So I was quarantined for 14 days because they didn't know if it was COVID or not. And that whole experience was just terrifying and awful. And I was kind of sitting there, and I was like, you know, I really want to make this quarantine series. And you're probably thinking, what does this have to do with anything that's around me? But I promise you, we're going to get to that. And so Rob was like, well, then just create it. Just create. You have to work through what you're creating right now, what's in your head. Because if you don't work through it, you're going to end up blocking yourself. And I was like, that's a load of BS, Rob. Okay. And so I actually took his advice for once. And I was like, all right, I'm going to make it. I'm just going to make this work about quarantine. And so I did, and I made a whole series. And it actually worked out pretty well. It went to 2 different galleries, and it was awesome. And then I went back to creating absolute crap. And I created crap for probably about 6 months. And every single time we would get on the call, I'd be like, hey, Rob, I created some more crap today. It's really bad. It's kind of sucky. It's terrible. And he was like, you have to keep working through it. And I think the biggest thing for me is never in my whole career as an artist have I ever had to work through something like this crazy. I mean, I was trying to push myself to create 7 days a week. And when you're creating 7 days a week, I mean, you are so mentally drained, let alone on top of a pandemic. And it's kind of just it's really hard. It's really hard to try and think about what am I going to do. And so for probably, if we're going to be honest, which I feel I can now because now I have a show, so all of these secrets are coming out, I'm spilling the tea. And for about 4 months, maybe even 5, if we'll stretch it, I pretty much laid on my carpet, staring up at the ceiling, wanting to cry because I had absolutely no ideas. And I was talking to my boyfriend, I was talking to my parents, I was like crying into my cat's fur, and I was like, oh my God, like I have to produce a whole show in literally less than 6 months, and I don't think I'm gonna do it. And every single time I got on the call with Rob, he was very inspiring to me. He was like, you know, this is all the process you just have to go through. This is what I've gone through. This is what it means to be an artist. And at the time, none of it made sense. And I was like, he's just trying to console me so I don't cry on this Zoom call. But it turns out that there actually is some sense to what Rob had to say. And I can honestly say that I do think that I learned a lot about what it truly means to be an artist this year. And the fact that art is pain, it's a really painful experience, but also beauty comes from that pain that you're experiencing. And I never, ever would have guessed that. I don't think that if it wasn't for the pandemic, I don't think that my show would look the way it does today. That being said, this is exactly how I want it to be. I couldn't ask for anything better. And how I came up with the idea for this show, ironically, started in the shower. I bought a notebook that was waterproof because for some reason, all my ideas come to me in the shower. For some people, it's driving on a country road. I don't know. And I was just, I don't know, having a really bad mental roadblock. And I was like, okay, like I just need to clear my mind and do this. And all of a sudden, all these ideas came to me. And it was like, okay, like what if we really take a feminist stance on this? And having a journalism background, I've always been obsessed with just documentary work and like how to tell a story through your images, not to be cliche about, oh, an image is worth 1,000 words. You're like, yeah, it is, cool. But like, there's such a thing you can do with imagery that's so much more powerful. And I decided, I was like, you know, I'm an angry individual about what is happening in our country. And I, quite frankly, do not like it. And so my answer to that was, well, I have a platform, photography. I have this fellowship. And I, you know, for maybe the only time in my life, I'll have like a whole entire show where I can do pretty much whatever I want. So why not just do this? And once I kind of came up with this idea, the ideas just kept coming and coming and coming. Mind you, I just want to put into perspective, we're talking like September right now. I had to have this done in December. So think about that, about where we are here. And the craziest thing was about all of this is I was having these crazy ideas like, wow, like what if I, you know, cover a whole room in like magazine ads and like take on this whole idea of, you know, what is society telling us a woman should be and why are they telling me like who I should be and what I should be when a majority of magazine editors are male and majority of the photographers are male. So why are they telling me as a woman what I should look like or do or feel like or see? And I remember I went up to Rob and I was like, hey, what if we do this? And every single time with every crazy idea I had, Rob was always just like, let's do it. Let's do it. There was never like, oh, Megan, that's crazy talk. What are you doing? It was always, you know, I think we should do it or try it. And you know, I told him, I was like, I want to print an 8-foot by 10-foot image. And he was like, let's do it. And that's actually the image that you can probably see a little bit of a part of behind me right now. You'll have to come in person to see the whole thing. But everything was just like, let's go, 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 let's do this. And I really appreciated that because at a time in my life when I felt like everything was going against me, I had somebody who was mentoring me and helping me realize that, oh, like, this isn't the end. Like, you can push through this. And not only was Rob doing that, I also, which when I have my long list of thanks, will be thanking them as well. But my parents and my boyfriend especially had the butt of all of this being, I mean, I was like crying to them and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. And I don't know how to do this. And what am I going to say? And luckily for me, they all were very supportive and they didn't stop answering my calls, even though they probably wanted to sometimes, but I'm extremely grateful for that. And so basically when September hit, you know, I told Rob and I was like, okay, like I need to, you know, start shooting. And basically he was like, you need to stop procrastinating. And I was like, you're probably right. And so we set up days, and I mean literal days of photo shoots. And I brought in models, which during COVID was extremely challenging. And we had pretty much as COVID safe of a photo shoot as we possibly could. I wanted to do a whole thing where I wanted to make it campus wide, and I wanted to have everyone on campus write a sign that said, because I'm a woman, I ... And this is what makes me feel like a female and all this stuff. And unfortunately, when COVID hit, you can't do that, especially when campus was operating at such a minimal level. And so I reached out to a few of my friends and I was like, hey, get me some people. I don't care who they are. And luckily for me, I got some pretty awesome models to come in. And very diverse as well. We managed, I think there's 5 different countries represented in my model. I don't know how you want to put that, but in all of the people that came to see it and came to model for me. And so that was really awesome because, you know, different women have different experiences. And I wanted to highlight that because I realized a little bit too far down the road that I was telling the story only through my lens as a straight white female. And obviously that's not the only type of women we have. And I didn't like that idea. I wanted to understand other people's stories. I wanted to understand, what does it mean as a Black woman to look through magazine ad after magazine ad and just see white face after white face? How damaging can that be to a young child? How damaging can that be to you now? And that really was almost a learning curve for me and an eye-opener, because I was talking to my models who were telling me how they felt unrepresented and how their children felt unrepresented. And it was heartbreaking and it was heart-wrenching. And I hope when you come in here, you feel that and you see that. And then another thing we tried to do is, like I said before, I wanted to have a campus-wide shoot, basically. And when I found out in March that that wasn't going to happen, I turned to the internet. And there's a power behind that. I actually reached out to my Facebook friends and I was like, hey, fill in that sentence, because I'm a woman, I. And I got quite a few responses, but it wasn't enough. So I reached out to a Women Who Support Women Facebook group. And I was like, hey, tell me your responses. And luckily for me, over 150 women responded in 24 hours, telling me their heart-wrenching stories about what it meant to them to be a woman. And it really just puts it into perspective, what that means, like what it means to be a female. And I hope when everyone comes to see the show that you get that from what I've created here. I mean, there's a purpose to everything that I have in signage. There's a purpose to where everything is placed. There is a purpose for all of it. And I always said from the get-go, and I remember I told Robin, I was like, you know, I don't want to sit here and give a traditional artist talk about, well, this is what my work means, because to every different female, it's going to mean something else based on your experience. And I don't want to be the person to tell you how to feel. Not just saying that this isn't for men either. It most certainly is for males, because I think it's an eye-opener for them. I think if you're a man, you might not realize what ads are directed toward women, or how women might feel in the workplace, or what it feels like to see, you know, the ideal body type that you might not fit in on an everyday basis. And I want them to realize it as well. This show is literally for everyone, as long as you're probably older than 18. The younger kids, it might not be the best place. But hey, start them young, right? They gotta know what's going on. But anyway, it's been an incredible, terrifying experience, to say the least. I am beyond grateful for what I've been able to, for the opportunities that I've been able to have here and what I've been able to accomplish under, you know, Rob's mentorship. And it all wouldn't be possible if it wasn't for the Efroymson family. So if they're out there watching, my greatest thanks goes to you. I really, really appreciate it. I honestly don't think I would have had an opportunity to explore what it means to be an artist if it wasn't for this opportunity. And not just that, when I graduated December of 2019, I told Rob probably a couple days before, and I was like, I still don't know what I want to do as a photographer. That's a terrifying thought. And then I walked the stage, another terrifying thought. And luckily for me, I think that this really showed me what it meant to be a fine art photographer. And also what about photography, like what photography is in general. You know, a lot of people don't always think about photography as a fine art practice. And I kind of wanted to show that like it is. You know, I classify myself as an artist. In one of Rob's classes, we read a lot about, you know, photo theory and what that means and how our photographers looked at and what a photographs mean. And it's fascinating. And I think you kind of, everybody has an idea of what photography is. Most people think, oh, it's my cell phone that I can just hit click and I have it and I'm a photographer and I'm an Instagram influencer. And it's like, sure, that's great. But you also have to understand the grueling time it is when you are a fine art photographer and how much time it takes to create something literally out of nothing, but also why you have everything at the same time. And what I mean by that is when you go out in the world, you can literally photograph anything very quickly, very, very quickly. You just pull out your phone and you hit snap and you've got it. But you also are starting with nothing because you have to composite that. It has to say something. It has to mean something. And so you have everything coming at you at once, but also nothing at the same time. And it's really hard to work through kind of that balance. And that's another issue I had with creating this show, because I was like, oh my gosh, you know, I can create all of this art about feminism and all of these broad ideas. And Rob was like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is just like a 3-room gallery here. You know, you can't be, you know, doing all this different stuff. We have to narrow it down. And that was the hardest part, is trying to figure out like, what is the most important thing to me? And how do I feel like other people are going to accept that? And I really hope that, you know, from this talk and from what you hear in the Q&A, and when you come see this show, that maybe your idea of photography changes. Maybe you start realizing like, whoa, like you can actually do a lot of cool stuff with photography and not just put it in a black frame with a white mat around it. You can actually make it an installation. You can print on cloth. You can make a point out of it. And that's what I really enjoyed. So anyway, I hope you all get to come see the show. I don't really want to spoil anything else for you. And like I said, I want you to think about it for yourself. So thank you so much for listening to me ramble on about my art. And I will see you soon in this Q&A. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Riley Garzini. I am a journalist with Evansville Living Magazine here in town. I'm also a graduate of the University of Southern Indiana College of Liberal Arts. I got my degree in journalism over the spring, May of 2020. But Megan, if you are ready to go here.
Hello.
Hello, how's it going? This will do.
Oh, well, yeah.
A handshake here.
Yeah.
Elbows. There we go.
Feet, you know, whatever.
All right. Well, without further ado, as we've said many times over here,
that's my favorite
over the past
phrase.
45 minutes, we'll go ahead and get started. I will say, if any of you have any questions, we will have a question and answer here at the end that I can ask her some questions that you guys have for Megan.
Or
Rob. Rob, if you have.
I'm just a sidekick.
Okay. Yeah. If you want to jump in here and answer any questions that I have for Megan, feel free to do so. But Megan, so.
Yes.
If I may call you that.
You can call me Megan. That's fine. That's totally. I mean, I prefer like, you know, Miss Thorne, you know, but it's fine. You can call me Megan.
All right, Megan.
Yeah.
So the title of your exhibition is Woman.
Yes.
As a woman who has grown up in an era in which media has really kind of distorted our perceptions about, you know, how a woman should look like, how they should dress, how they should act, and a lot of this you touched on in your show as well. How have these displays influenced your view of feminism, and how have you been able to incorporate that in your exhibition?
Yeah. So I think it's a good question. You might have to give me a second here to collect my thoughts, but I do think that, you know, obviously that idea of like what a woman should be that is portrayed in the media is 9 times out of 10 pretty offensive. You do have recently in the past couple of years, you have, I don't know if you want to call her an influencer, but people like Lizzo, even, I mean, if you look at like TLC, they have a lot of like body positivity people on there too. And I think we're trying to make a difference in it, but there's still a lot of like this idea that you have to have that hourglass figure and the blonde hair and the blue eyes and all of what that means. And I think that, you know, you have to attack those things to make a change. And that is kind of like what I wanted to do in this exhibition. Like you said, I did touch base on quite a few things with that. Especially, I'm not sure how much you guys can see. You have to come to the show. But behind us, you know, the whole idea that women are predominantly viewed for their body. I mean, you can argue me on that, but we all know it's kind of true. And, you know, I kind of wanted to be like, do we realize how much of an issue that actually is when we're just viewing that? No. And that's what like you kind of look at as subconscious sexism, if you want to call it that. And I think women are guilty of that as well, is we're subconsciously being like, oh, like this is, you know, that's how a woman should look, or, oh, she's too fat to do this thing, or, oh, she's too skinny to do that. And I mean, we're judging ourselves as women. And I really wanted to kind of like pinpoint that as a feminist, that, you know, what does that feminism idea mean? And how do you become a feminist when so much in our society are we being told not to be? And that's what I wanted to showcase, even if it's just like subliminal messaging, is, you know, I have a whole section on, you know, makeup and perfume and how much money are we actually spending on to change ourselves. And it's a drastic amount. You look at plastic surgery, people spend so much money to get plastic surgery, and then they do it again in like 5 years, and again in 5 years. And then all of a sudden you look weird. And I think, you know, that's the whole point of this is, you know, feminism is different for anybody, but at the root of it is an attack on society for making us feel the way that we do, which is that we're not enough and we will never be enough. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, it does. So do you have a favorite feminist? Is there a certain role model that you would say you kind of catered your show around?
I listened to a lot of Lizzo while creating this. I'm not gonna lie. What a woman, man. I mean, she's such like a raw individual as well. And, you know, you can tell that she like loves her body the way it is. And she's such a powerful woman. And I talk to my friend Cammie all the time and we're like, what would Lizzo do? How would Lizzo react to this? Or we're like, Lizzo would think we look great. Like she's our best friend, even though she's definitely not. She didn't even know us. But, and I mean, for this century, I feel like she's great. Now, if you want to turn into photography wise, I have always been a huge fan of Imogen Cunningham, who has long since passed away. But she was a member of Group F64 with Ansel Adams and Edward Weston. And she pretty much... she kind of founded a lot of things to do with photography in terms of like how we print. And every book you read that doesn't have her in it says Edward Weston and Ansel Adams, and I forget the other two guys because I didn't care about them. But they are the ones that founded her printing process. But if you read, there's one book, I can't remember what it's called, unfortunately, that's written by her. She actually talks about how her dad was a scientist and she got into science. And that's how she became and did it. And they took credit for it, which is why she left Group F64, because they were taking credit for her. So talk about a woman. Another feminist as well. I mean, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, may she rest in peace. I mean, need I say more? Absolute powerhouse of a woman. I probably wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing right now if it wasn't for her. I mean, she paved the way for females from the get-go. And then I know you didn't ask for all of these, but and then in my personal life as well. I mean, I grew up with a feminist mother who taught me, I feel like since the day I was born, not to take crap from men and to be a strong lady. And my aunt told me the same thing. And so, and even my dad was like, hey, you're gonna do what you want to do. Like, you're not gonna let men stomp on you. So how was I not supposed to end up like this?
So you kind of grew up in a feminist household, and kind of grew up with a lot of the ideas that you have incorporated into your show.
Absolutely.
And so, kind of going off of that, what are really your origins in the art world? You know, was this something that you always wanted to do, or did this stem off something else?
No, actually. I did not think I was going to be an artist ever, really, until I came to college. I dabbled in photography and 4-H, like most kids in like 3rd grade. I was like, this is fun. I'm going to do this. And then I kind of stopped. So like, didn't really photograph all middle school, didn't really photograph until my senior year of high school. I took AP art and I did pretty well in that. And so I was like, all right, like, cool. But then it kind of stopped because I come from a family of artists. I come from a family of creative people. And I've seen that the struggles that they've had, you know, paying off student loans, finding work, getting their name out there. And I was like, oh my God, like, do I really want that? Like, the stress? I got enough stress. Nah. And so I came into college and I was like, I'm going to be a radio TV journalist. And that's what I'm going to do. And I mean, I did journalism pretty professionally, I would say, for like 3 years of college. I worked at the Shield all 4.5 years. I worked at the Evansville Courier and Press. I received a scholarship. I received, you know, an internship to work at the Sullivan Daily Times. And I thought that I was going to be a journalist. And then one summer when I was working as a journalist, I won't say where, but things just were not clicking and I was just miserable. And I was like, why do I feel this way? I don't know. I'm upset. And I couldn't figure out why. And I think it's because my creative outlet has been stripped from me almost. Not saying you can't be a creative journalist, you can. But artistically, it's a lot harder to be. And so I told my parents the thing that they probably never wanted to hear me say, which was, I'm going to become an art major. And my dad, I feel like, wanted to go and cry into a pillow and scream from the rooftops. The minute I said it, it was like, oh my gosh, we're screwed. And we were actually having this conversation like a week ago. And I was like, haha, remember when you thought my life was over when I became an art major? And he was like, yeah, I do. And I was like, okay. And he was like, yeah, but like you've proved yourself, like you're doing what you're doing. And I think I realized that when I became an art major, that I really wanted to be an artist. And to be an artist, you have to want it, not just want, like you have to like ride or die with art if you want to do something. And that's what I realized. And that's the same thing with like this Efroymson. I was like, you're going to put 110% into this. Like you're going to give your life to this and hopefully something comes of it. And if it, you know, and so far things have been going pretty well. And I think I just realized there was no turning back from that. And I didn't want my parents to be like, oh no, I wanted them to be like, holy cow, like my daughter's doing awesome stuff. And going off the phone call I had with them the other day, they're pretty darn proud, which means I think I did my job.
And the passion shows.
Thank you. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
So the Efroymson itself is a year-long fellowship.
Yes.
Which required you to produce art from when you got it in January of 2020 until now. Mm-hmm. So what are some of the challenges that come with creating artwork for that long period of time?
As Rob can probably agree, lots of frantic phone calls and Zoom meetings and tears and stress and growth.
Learning how to work through her work is, I think, one of the biggest things.
Yes. No, I agree. Yeah. And that's kind of like what I was saying before. Like, I really do feel like I had a very, you know, up close experience of what it does mean to truly be an artist, which I'd never experienced before. And, you know, when you're creating work for a year long, I mean, you're creating you're expected to be creating 365 days a year of that, you know, like in my head, I was like, I'm not going to have a break. I'm just going to create every day and life's going to be so fun. And it wasn't, and that didn't happen. But, you know, I think you have to understand that, like, there's so much of that where you are just sitting there and you're like, I don't know what to do. And I remember Livia, the last Efroymson, was like, let it happen. And she was like, there's going to be days where you're like not going to know what to do and it's going to be okay. So if the new Efroymson is listening to this, it's going to be okay. You're going to have those days and it'll be fine. But yeah, I mean, creating, you know, I think you have to think of it in any profession. If you were doing one thing for a whole year, so like, for instance, in your profession, if you were going to be writing one singular story for a whole year, think about how nitpicky you would get if one little tiny thing is off. And that's kind of what it becomes. It's like, it's your baby, it's your child. Like this whole show, I have, you know, it's like an eat, sleep, breathe thing. I've been having dreams about it, nightmares about it for like the past month. Like you can't stop talking about it. I was talking about it to someone at Office Depot. Like you become the embodiment of your show when you're doing something like this for a year. I'm not really sure if that is. I tangent. So.
Well, and one of the things that she found, and we talked a lot about this, is I would say things like you have to make a lot of crap before you come up with something good.
I did.
So how many pieces of art do you think you threw away or scrapped?
Oh my God.
Over the course of the past year?
Starting in January?
Most.
Yeah.
Most.
Pretty much anything I created from January to about October, I scrapped.
Wow.
And I really thought
it's really only a few months of a show.
Kind of.
Well, the amazing thing about this is one of the things that the Efroymson was allowing her is most undergraduates have the opportunity to make a piece of work for a project. And maybe they kind of pull 3 or 4 projects into the same realm. So kind of working off of the same concept. But few graduates have that opportunity to really spend a great deal of time concentrating on a singular concept. And in Megan's case, what she was able to do, she knew early on that she was going to be making work about feminism. And she was doing this, what would it be, a year in fall of 19. Mm-hmm. And in spring of 20, she was still doing this. But I kept telling her, and she would come to me and say, look at this. I said, it's great, but it's not there yet. And she would say, this is going to be in my show. And I'd say, okay, we'll see about that. And all these works that she said are going to be in my show aren't in the show.
None of them are in the show.
Because what she had to do is she had to realize she had to grow. She had to work through this stuff.
Yeah.
And that's what helped her really become, you know, the grand artist is understanding what it means to dive into a concept and live it, breathe it in every way.
Literally nothing in the show that I created at that time.
So you knew beforehand a little bit about what you were getting into. So what made you want to apply for the
So I remember during my artist talk when I said I didn't know what I wanted to do after I graduated. Yeah. Let's revisit that for a second. Oh gosh. Was it in March of 2019 when we had the conversation and I was like, I don't know what I want to do. And we were talking about the Efroymson and Rob was like, you should probably start on this now because we all know I procrastinate. It's a known fact. And I don't know, I started kind of thinking in March of 2019. So the Efroymson application was due in like November, I think. But in March, I was like, okay, like I'm going to start trying to like work through some of these ideas, you know, and try and like see where that takes me. And yeah, and so I don't know, that summer I was like, okay, like I'm gonna try to make some feminist work, which actually, there's one piece in here that I did make during that summer, and that's in the first room. But I don't know, because I was like, if I can start a portfolio, then that means I have an idea that I can work off of. And so Rob and I worked really closely with that over that summer. And I would come in, I'd be like, hey, I have this. And, you know, it kind of started working. And I started building a portfolio together pretty much starting in June for November. I've never been that prepared in my life. Now, the artist statement, everything I had to write, I think we were doing that 30 minutes before it was due. But that doesn't matter. The art itself was done. And then you know, I kind of kept going with the idea of feminism because feminism, I mean, that's such a broad topic. Like, and I did not know which way I wanted to go and how I wanted to do it. I just knew that I didn't really have another option because I so desperately needed to know that if I could do this in fine art, then like things would be okay. And I'd never really had that experience. And so I was like, well, if I do this Efroymson and I do a whole year of fine art, I mean, hopefully I don't hate it because that's a long ass time, but we're going to try. And I didn't hate it. I loved it. I fell in love with fine art.
But even having like an entire year to produce art, there's a lot of things you could have done. There's so, you had the possibilities were endless. That it was such a broad of a scope that you could have gone with. Did you ever find yourself kind of going out and kind of pulling yourself back and saying, no, like maybe this is too big of an idea to pull off in a year?
Absolutely.
Weekly.
Yeah, it was, I have to admit, even though it was a weekly thing of pulling me back in though, you never stifled my creativity though. It was like, let's see how we can bring this creativity on a smaller scale and a lot smaller scale. Because I mean, I filled a whole sketchbook and I was like, I'm going to have all these things and I'm going to make sculptures and I'm going to build walls and and it just like, my imagination went with it and I did it. But it was definitely a weekly, like you can't, like you have to, if you don't, I think the problem with having a year is a great thing and also a curse, because when you have a year, you can keep thinking like, well, what if I do this? Well, what if I do this? And I kid you not, about 2 weeks ago, Rob was like, you have to stop doing what if I do this. 2 weeks ago, probably, I would say about.
I'd say 2 days ago.
2 days ago, 2 days ago, I walked in Rob's office and I was like, I've added another image. And he was like, what? And I was like, sorry. But yeah, it's a blessing and a curse to have that time. But I think you have to have, and I mean, I consulted with other people as well. And I was like, what if I do this? And then, you know, I had family and friends being like, I don't get it. Or I don't think everyone's going to understand that. And so I kind of had to narrow it down to like, what do I think everyone's going to be impacted by? And that's how we ended up with this. I think everybody, no matter your gender, your sexuality, whatever you are, you're going to understand at least one part of it, if hopefully all, but you'll understand at least one part. I won't tell you which part that is. You have to come and see the show.
So the pandemic itself changed a lot of things for you and you had to switch gears a lot of times.
Yes.
So how important was the support that you received from your peers, your friends, your family, your professors? And, you know, what did that mean to you to be able to receive that? And how did that motivate you to continue on?
Oh my gosh. My family, my boyfriend, my everything has been my absolute rock. I told myself I wasn't going to cry, so hopefully I can get through this without crying. And also Rob's been great. And my cat. But no, I honestly, like, you cannot do something like this alone. You just can't. I mean, I'm fortunate enough that I had such a great group of people that, you know, no matter how many times I called them, how many times I asked the same question, which I asked Rob probably the same question, like all the time. And, you know, that it's amazing. It's an incredible feeling of support. I don't think I could have asked for a better group of people to be on the sideline, if you will, for me. I owe them my life. But I don't think I could have done anything close to this. I don't even think I could have done this if it wasn't for those people in my life, at all. I mean, I just don't even want to think about, like, yeah.
So then, Rob, for you, what was it like working with Megan?
A panic attack. No, I'm
I'm sure it was. It
was really great. I could say, you know, when we were working together, say online, spring and through the summer, it was tough. I mean, it was tough because I wanted to see her basically bring her dreams to fruition, but she just wasn't able because she didn't have the opportunities. As we came kind of through the summer and started into the year, our campus was still actually on lockdown, and I was able to get permission to bring her onto campus one day. And we had this long conversation about, we are going to be spending a lot of time together. We're going to be in each other's bubble, and so we realized that if one of us gets sick, we're both going to get sick, and it's just like, being a significant other, being a family member. And that's kind of what we are. We've become family out of this.
Absolutely.
And I think what's been really interesting is figuring out how to cope with these things. And at times it was a lot of kind of back and forth of what can we or can we not do? How can we approach something? And she had some grand ideas. Like she said earlier, ideas of we wanted to involve the entire campus community. And I'll tell you, I got so excited to be doing this kind of project. And then all of a sudden it gets pulled out from underneath us. And I'm like, poor Megan she has this awesome opportunity and it just got pulled away. But instead what she does is, as they say, she made lemonade out of lemons and really turned it around.
And so you've worked with Megan for a number of years now. What are the qualities that you think make her a successful artist?
Oh.
The ability to take criticism. And harsh criticism at times.
Absolutely.
One of the hardest things about being an artist is understanding that everything you make is not good. Everything you make may not even be close to good. And sometimes what you make belongs in a garbage can. And that criticism isn't a personal attack. It's a growth mechanism. It's how can we make this idea better? How can we grow on these ideas? And that was the thing that she really desired. There were times we would meet and I would be kind of soft and nice on her. And she'd finally just say, give it to me straight. Really? What's going on? You don't like this? And I'm like, no, I don't. And it took a lot of that kind of back and forth and banter and figuring out, because I didn't want to have her start crying in my office, although it still happened. It did. But it's really about this growth mechanism and the desire to go through this. The other part for her was, how do I visualize these ideas that are in my head and wanting to continually looking at these? And this meant looking at hundreds of different artists and then going beyond the arts. It could be anything from philosophy to psychology to politics. And we've had a lot of politics this past year. And so Megan dove into everything. And she would just send me a link to something or talk to me and say, look, I saw this, I read this, I watched this video. And I'm like, great, how are you going to use that in your work? And that was the key thing, was she never closed her mind to anything. She wanted to experiment and try, and she was willing to make that bad work to become artwork.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So Megan, going back to you, we talked about things that you expected coming into this. And there were a lot of things that were unexpected, obviously the pandemic, simple problems that arise, but what to you was something that you completely didn't expect that threw you for a loop and really challenged you in a way you didn't think you were going to be challenged?
There's two things I would say, actually. The first thing is probably I did not quite realize how much bad art I was going to make. And you don't realize it at the time that you're making it until you look back. And I looked back the other day and I was like, oh God, who let me do this? Who let me, yeah. And I think that that kind of threw me for a loop as well, because it's in my classes, I feel like I never really, you have assignment back to back to back to back. If you just make a bad assignment, you make a bad assignment. You kind of know that you've made, or maybe you just didn't give it enough time or enough thought. You kind of know going into a critique, it's not my best work. But it's kind of more like a planned situation. You know that, you know what I mean? And I think with something like this, I didn't know. I got to the point at one point where I was like, I don't even know what I'm making. Is this even good? Is this bad? Is this are people gonna get it? Do I even get it? Do I even still like it? And when Rob taught me a trick early on, which is you have to just constantly be looking at your work every day. And when you get sick of it, look at it some more. And I didn't really quite understand that process of becoming literally one with my work. And that was kind of a curveball for me. The second, which I've kind of talked about a little bit before, is just the amount of like a creative block and like how to work through that. I did not anticipate at all that I was going to go through, literally a whole month of literally nothing, like not one idea, not one inspiration. Zilch, like there's nothing happening up here. And
so how did you work through that?
I just kept researching, like Rob said, looking at other artists, looking at what they're doing, looking at politics, reading about other artists. Conveniently for me, for a good majority of the spring semester, I said I was in like a photo theory class where you kind of talk all about like what that is. I won't go into, that's a whole thing. I don't even know if I understand it, but and kind of understanding and learning from other people. And like I said, good for me, I was in another class. So I was still having my peers tell me like, oh, this sucks, Megan. Or, well, they never actually told me that, but I could read between the lines. Or, seeing what they were doing, what I was doing, what other people were doing, what was going on in the world. And yeah.
Is there a particular artist that you were researching that got your brain juices flowing, or?
Oh, Lord. I'm trying to think. There are so many. I've always been a huge fan of Barbara Kruger. Huge fan. I absolutely love, admire her work. And sometimes I just look at her work just from time to time and be like, all right, Barbara did it. That's cool. Like maybe I can do something. And then
was it work similar to this, or was it?
It's yeah. I would say she's a very feminist-driven political artist, very, very political artist, and she has a talent with words that it makes you think beyond. She's amazing, and she also uses red lettering. Not saying that that's a coincidence, but it kind of is. It was inspired. We don't have the same font. So
it's just an inspiration.
It was an inspiration. And I don't think it's not the same red. So, but, I've been working through, even when Rob and I had our first class together, I was like, I'm really inspired by her. And I was trying to create work like hers, but I was trying to create too much like hers and it just was terrible. But definitely. And then luckily for me, I had a friend, Sarah Lesh, who's a lovely person. She got me a book. She gets me an art book every year for my birthday or for Christmas. And it's literally the best thing ever. And I love it. And I hope she knows how much I love it. And she got me one. It was like 25 female artists that are like not really talked about. And I was just reading like all of their stories, like Lee Miller. And all their names just left my head now. Oh gosh. There's someone named Claude. I know that. I don't know. Anyway. But I was just reading through their stuff and seeing like, what were they doing? How are they doing it? And it's very inspiring.
And so, Megan, final question for you. Mm-hmm. As you open your show,
yes,
if you wanted the audience to take away one feminist principle from your exhibition, what would it be?
I think that, mainly that, just understand that there is a problem and understand like what feminism is. A lot of people think that feminism is the idea that women just want to be better than men all the time. That's not the case. Women want equality. We want to be, if a man's here, we want to be here. We want to be on the same level, making the same pay with the same opportunity. And I hope people understand that. I also hope that people understand the hardships of just being a woman in general. Having to put your keys between your knuckles at night when you're walking to your car, having to check your closets when you get home because you're scared that someone might be in there if they followed you home, locking all of your doors. It's fears that I don't personally think that men have to experience. And I'm not saying that they should. I'm just saying that I hope that men understand what it's like. And I hope that women understand it doesn't have to be like this. And I think that the change has to start with both people in order to make a change happen. And, I kind of said this from the get-go that you know, I don't want to tell you what to think about this, but quite honestly, if you walk out of here and you don't get it about what's going on here, then I think you need to take another lap, because you got, like, I mean, I don't know how much more I can put it out there without literally putting words on a wall and being like, this is why. Like, this
There are words on the wall.
There are, but Airhead isn't super, you know, explanatory. But, you know, I want people, this isn't a gallery that you're going to walk through in 2 minutes. Like, I want you to sit down. I have benches. Sit with the work. Understand, what does that mean for you? What do magazine ads mean to you? What does it mean to you to be called an airhead? Like, you know, that kind of went a little bit off from what you asked me. I do that a lot, but I'm a tangent person. It's fine.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Megan. I don't know if we have any questions.
Oh boy.
Audience.
Yay.
Here we go. Wow. They have a lot
Oh my
for you.
God. All right. We'll try and make this short and sweet.
So, was it difficult to find models for the show because of restrictions?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my God. It was so hard. I had so many people that were like, I'll do it, but like, what about COVID? And I was like, look, fam, we'll be safe about it. You know, we'll social distance. I'll wear a mask. You know, you'll wear a mask when you're not being photographed. And I had a lot of people that I had lined up in February that were gonna model for me. And then they all were like, I'm so sorry. And you can't be mad. You know, you can't. Like, that's, I mean, a pandemic hit. Luckily for me, I'm name dropping a lot of people because I'm grateful for them. I have a friend named Leisha, and she was like, I got like 10 people. And I was like, oh my God, I could hug you right now. And she did. She gave me a bunch of phone numbers. It was like, text these people, and I think they'll help you. And a majority of the people you see in my show are from Leisha. And I really appreciate that. Yeah. Thank you, Leisha.
So, what is your favorite piece in the show and why?
Man, I would honestly probably say, so I have a piece that I've titled Pretty in Plastic. It's an 8 by 11 foot image. You can see it literally from wherever you are, almost. And that's probably my favorite, not just because of its size. It was the first image that I feel like I got inspired by doing. It was with a very, very good friend of mine, very talented individual named Eleanor. We've done so much together. And we actually, you know, manipulated her to look plasticky, to look like a Barbie. And I remember asking her, I was like, hey girl, like, do you care if I like edit you a little bit? And she was like, oh no. So, but that was the image that kind of sparked things for me. I was like, whoa, like, this is something we can do. And then that everything kind of followed that.
Here's a funny one. What is your favorite Lizzo song?
Oh, man, would it be shocking if I said Like a Girl? No, that's a bop. I do like a Girl. Tempo's got some good beats. But coconut oil has always been my go-to.
And so where can we find your future work? Do you have a website?
I do.
Or do you regularly post on social media? Do you have a page? Where
Yes,
can people find some of your future work?
So you can find my work on meganthornephotography.com. I also have a Facebook page called Megan Thorne Photography. But basically, I kind of just post predominantly on my personal Instagram, and that's just Megan Thorne. I think it's like 4 E's. I don't know. But yeah, you can easily find me on Facebook. Please follow my Instagram. I have a lot going on. That's usually where I post everything first. So
social media age, that's what you get.
Absolutely.
And so do you think that this exhibition will influence what you produce going forward, and how do you think that it will influence it?
I've been doing a lot of thought on that. I'm not gonna lie. I honestly am not 100% sure. I think I do want to continue with a feminine lens to my work, mainly because I feel like that's something I've started and I don't quite feel like I've finished. There's, like I said before, there's so much to attack with feminism that I feel like I've just barely scraped it. And I currently don't think I'm done with that. Now, if you ask me what I'm going to do next in terms of art, Hate to break it to you, but ask me in like a year.
So did you set up all these shots yourself, or did you have a team that helped you?
No, this was all me. Wait, you mean like photography, right? Like not the exhibition?
Yeah, photography.
Okay, yeah, photography, no. Like this was, I mean, I would run it by Rob sometimes and I'd be like, hey, like if I shot it this way, like what do you think? But I mean, I was the one behind the camera for all of it, which was daunting.
And was it difficult to get the proportions correct for the large scale prints and banners?
Gosh, yes, absolutely. I can't even tell you how much how much planning I had to do so much planning. I have a whole notebook this thick filled to the brim with stuff. Actually, almost 2 notebooks. Because when you're printing so big, not only do you have to make sure like everything you have is in focus and at the right ISO and the right aperture and everything, but you have to think like, well, what is this going to look dumb at 10 feet? Maybe. And you kind of have to like weirdly piece it out in your brain and then try and make that happen on paper. Luckily for me, I feel like this is my brainchild. Like what I saw in my head is intangible now, which is amazing, but it was incredibly difficult.
What was your inspiration for the Airhead pieces?
All right, ladies. I feel like we all know the term Airhead. Especially, you know, unfortunately, if you're, well,
what does the term Airhead mean?
Airhead, I think, is a commonly used, not as common now in 2021. But, you know, if you look back into like the early 2000s, 90s, especially, I mean, you go back like 60s, 50s, they used to call like a lot of blondes typically an airhead. You're dumb blonde. Airhead basically means that you're stupid. There's nothing going on up here. Sorry. And I kind of just wanted to make kind of like a point to that. And so that's the reason why, you know, it's kind of a joke, like they don't have heads, because I'm playing into the idea, but we have them all in like a pretty powerful stance. Or, you know, she's a nurse in a nursing, you know, outfit or whatever, or like military. And I think that it's kind of like turning it on its head. It's making an idea of like, okay, this is what airhead means, but like, what does that actually do to us? Does it make us feel like we're headless? And it also plays into the idea, you know, hey, men always think that women are just a body and no brain. So why not play into it? Oh, we got questions.
We got questions. I
gotta keep going.
Know.
Oh, I feel famous. I feel like I'm on like Tonight Show. All right.
So how did your journalism experience influence the show? And is there a connection between the use of the magazines and the exhibition?
Okay, so I'll answer that first part first. So yes, journalism impacts my life all the time. I think my journalism degree taught me how to research, how to tell a story through imagery and through words and through an idea. It helped me have a thought process more of like, how do I want this to be? And that was a really cool thing for me. I wouldn't change my journalism degree at all. I don't think I'd be able to have the ability to tell a story through photography if it wasn't for that. Honestly, whoever asked this question just made me think about maybe there is a connection subconsciously, but I sure didn't think of it. So there's no journalist connection between the magazines and being a journalist or former journalist. As for a connection with the magazines, with the show, you just have to come see it for yourself.
Is Rob nice? Blink twice. I'm not sure if that's a rhyme or a question.
That's hilarious. Is Rob nice? What a question. Yes, I think Rob is a very caring individual. He's shaking his head. Rob is nice, yes. I think that Rob definitely pushed me at times, but I needed to be pushed. So I think I think Rob cared about this as much as I did. I really do.
So is there an art skill that you feel like you developed, wrote, built through your work on this exhibition?
That's a good question, man. An art skill. I mean, I think that yes.
Non-art skill. Sorry.
Oh, a non-art skill?
Yeah, I couldn't read the handwriting of it.
Oh, my bad. Gosh. Well, now I started thinking about art skill.
And just answer both.
I don't know.
Art skill.
Okay, so a non-art skill, yes. I think that being able to like plan. I'm the world's worst planner. I don't plan anything, literally anything. I think I kind of learned how important it is to be a planner and an organized individual. I'm still not organized by any means, but I like to say I'm about 5% more organized than I was before. I use an external hard drive now. It's got folders. But I really learned the importance of how, you know, being organized and planning things out is very beneficial to like, even just in life, not just with this. There were so many times Rob was like, okay, so you've printed out this like 5-foot long image. How are you going to hang it? And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, you don't know? You don't know how you're going to hang it and you just printed it? So I think that that's the biggest skill that I feel like I learned. I don't know if I've mastered it by any means, but I've learned the importance of it, which I don't think I had a respect as much for being organized beforehand.
And what was the most surprising aspect of you putting together the show?
What was the most surprising aspect of it?
Yes.
I would say the fact that it got done. I don't know. There was but honestly, yeah. I mean, I think the most surprising thing to me is when I walked through this whole entire gallery, it's literally what was in my head, like point blank. Like there's not one thing in this gallery that I didn't foresee happening or that I had to like change up or was like, well, I guess I can't do this. And I have to do something else. Like this is, I don't know. Like I'm honestly surprised how well it turned out and how I was able to like make something kind of happen, if that makes sense. Not to say that I'm surprised I completed it, kind of am, but just kidding. I'm happy about it.
So is there anybody you'd like to thank?
I'd like to thank.
Yes.
Oh,
You have a whole list.
where's my list? Oh no.
You dropped it.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, that's right.
Here, I can look for pictures.
Yes.
I feel like you.
Thank you.
Oh.
All right, buckle up, folks. It's about to get real. All right. I'll also try and do this without crying. We'll see. Okay, so 2 pages. First of all, I would like to point out, first of all, that this is in no particular order. So like, if you're wondering why you're at the bottom, I don't know, you're probably just the way it came to my head. So don't take offense. My first and foremost, I would love to thank my mother and my father for giving me the biggest amount of support that you could possibly imagine. And also for, constantly challenging me and being like, well, what if you do this? And what if you do that? They were never like, sure, Megan. They always challenged me to be the best that I could be with art. And not just that, they helped me put this show together. They helped me come up with ideas. They also spent 18 hours putting together every single magazine to that stupid wall over there on a Saturday. From the get-go, they have been in my corner rooting me on, and I'm so grateful for that. And also my family in general. My aunt has constantly been like, so what are you doing? Like, how's that working out? Super supportive. My brother in England, we Skype once a week, and he'll be like, I see you're doing like photography stuff. Like, how's it going? Like, what are you doing? And it's just the idea that they just care so much is like emotional to me. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I also would like to thank my boyfriend for enduring tears and tears and questioning and what if I do this and what if I do that and how does this work, and never being like, oh my God, Megan, shut up, even though I'm sure Countless times he wanted to tell me that. I don't blame him. I would have wanted to tell me to shut up too. And also his family. They've been super supportive of me as well, and I really appreciate that. I'd like to thank my cat, Moose. He's a great little lad. Yeah, he does good stuff. Of course, I'd like to thank Rob. I mean, I feel like I've expressed my thanks to him multiple times over this, but a huge thank you again for never stifling my creativity, never telling me that something was too hard or too impossible, and challenging me to constantly take the leap and take charge of what I wanted to do and be a strong lady and a strong artist. I'd like to thank Cammie for being just a rock through this. And, you know, even during COVID, she'd come and sit outside my apartment and in our cars, and we would talk through things. I'd like to thank Megan, who has, you know, just constantly been like, if you need to talk, like, you know, we can talk through it, and edited my—
Not yourself.
Not me, my former roommate. And has always just been there for me, like, throughout it all. And it's like, you've got this, dude, like, you can do it. And she also edited my book and my artist statement, and she edits everything for me, and she's great. I would like to thank Hobby, who kindly donated a lot of makeup, clothes, bags, and things to this show. I would like to thank Lizzie, who works at the print lab here on campus. She came and dedicated her whole weekend here to help me set up. Probably thinks I'm crazy. Well, and Bailey and Liliana, who also dedicated a tremendous amount of time to help me set up my show. Kathy Oath over in the Liberal Arts Building for listening to my frantic phone calls of, oh my God, how do I get paid? I would also like to thank Al in the art department for when I had the idea to do a ceramic piece, was full like, yeah, let's do it. You got it. And working through ideas with me, we sat down and had lunch for like an hour and a half one day and just talked. I would like to thank Brett here at the gallery for, you know, helping me pretty much, you know, get an idea of how do I set up a show? Like, how does that work? And also his support. I'd like to thank Christina as well, who was a former Efroymson. And when I was like practically crying because I didn't know what to do, it was like, you got this. Like, I know where you are. I feel you. It's fine. I would like to thank Sarah Christensen Blair as well for, you know, being amazing and helping me with my book. I'd like to thank Sarah Lesh, who's a feminist role model as well and a powerhouse of a lady, and very supportive. I'd like to thank my friend Sam, who brought me donuts when I was in the print lab for hours, and he's also great and supportive. I'd like to thank my coworkers and supervisors at Shoe Carnival, who have given me all these Fridays off for the past month, even when I started a new job, to make sure I could get this done. If they're watching, thank you. I'd like to thank Dawn and Dave in the art department. I know we're like, are you still going? But when I was printing long hours, they were like, oh my gosh, you got this. Like, you're killing it. And Dave for coming in here and doing the lighting for me. And the whole USI art department. I mean, you know, without them, I wouldn't be doing this. Same with the Efroymson family. You know, I'm so grateful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All of my models that came, all the people that donated makeup and frames to me. I'd like to also thank Josh, who documented my whole show and photographed it. Promise we're on the way out. I'd like to thank my neighbor, Kathy. She always like helped me out and supported me. One of my great friends, Eleanor, who modeled, worked through ideas with me, talked to me all the time. Tori and Chelsea from the Evansville Museum for their utmost support. Dara, who is a great friend of mine and former co-artist. I don't know, we've done a lot together, so supportive. Laisha for all of the models and her support. Family friend Anna for all of her support. And of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because without her, where would we be? And now I would also like to thank RuPaul and Imogen Cunningham for, you know, they're just great. Julia Margaret Cameron, Michelle Obama, Dolly Parton, Lee Miller, Dorothea Lange, Anna Atkins. I'm not done. Claude Cahoon, Wendy Carlos. I'm still going. And Annie Leibovitz for telling me that you can be a badass woman photographer and people will still take you seriously. And that's a night. Thank you for coming.
Before we go, I want to take this opportunity to recognize and introduce Hannah Jones, who I believe is at least watching us this evening. She was chosen to be the 2021 Efroymson Bridge Year Fellow. I know that Hannah's already been hard at work and already put in many hours in the studio painting and working with her faculty mentor, Nancy Rain Mendez. Even though I haven't hardly seen any students yet, at least not in person, I think I've already been asked about the juried show 2 or 3 times. Entries for the show will start on March 8th. Our jury this year is a graphic designer from the state of New York. Look for more information about the juried show soon. Thank you again. Have a good evening.